guys, welcome back to the Center Podcast. This is Emily and Drost here today. And today we have an exciting segment. We're going to talk about relationships, all things relationships. I'm honestly kind of excited to get into it. I feel like this one's a juicy one.
Yeah, funny enough, I chose this topic after our conversation about social media last week. And I wanted to bring up dating apps, but I felt like that would have added a whole nother hour onto the podcast, so I figured why not make a whole episode of it.
I like it. I like this topic.
So, what are your view on dating apps?
I hate them. I hate them. I think they're horrible. And in that, I mean that very critically to the application itself, not the people who necessarily use them. I feel like people who use dating apps are one of two people. And honestly, like, no judgment to either. It's your thing. You know, your choice. But you're either going to find people who are looking for a hookup, and that is the whole point, is just you're trying to find a link, just an entry point, right? Or you've hit a new level of, there's no one in my real life that I know of who is single and that I'm willing to go out and find somebody. Like, maybe you don't do the bar scene, so you don't want to go to bars. Maybe you don't think you're going to meet anybody authentic at, parties and stuff like that. Maybe your friends don't have single friends. Maybe you don't have a hobby that you go to often. And so you're just going to go ahead and try to find your soulmate on Tinder. And the irony of that sentence is humorous.
Finding your soulmate on Tinder is a wild statement, but it happens. I mean, we've heard success stories.
It does. It happens. It happens rarely, but I have heard it happens. I've heard people have way better success on apps that require a membership.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, of course, like, everybody knows about Match.com, and people genuinely find people on Match.com, but you have to pay for that. Same thing, I think, with eHarmony. I had a teacher in high school who met her wife on Plenty of Fish, which is crazy, because that app is so sketch. Like, yeah. That app is scary.
That's so funny. What's so scary about it? I've heard of it, but I don't know the premise. I don't know what the gimmick is.
I don't know what the gimmick is either, honestly, but the best way I could talk about, like, it looks like Craigslist, like, but for people. Like, I don't know, it's really, unsophisticated. The UI is ugly, like, the user interface is ugly. It's just really dated, from what I hear, and I don't like it. I wouldn't dare go on a date with anyone on Plenty of Fish.
Isn't Craigslist for people just Craigslist?
Do people find people on Craigslist?
Yeah, it's typically for, like what you said before, it's for very specific niches of people.
Oh, gross.
Is the nicest way I could say that.
Gross. But yeah, I know, I knew one girl in specific who met her, like, significant other on Bumble. That they went on a couple Bumble dates, and they've been together for a while now, like 2 years maybe. 2.5, almost 3 years together now. And then I know Hinge is the new thing going around. I'm not familiar with it. That was way past my time of, like, dating apps.
Yeah, no, Hinge just supposedly labels themselves as the dating app meant to be deleted.
Yeah, I've seen that before. It's like you're supposed to find your somebody on this one. This is not a hookup app.
But unfortunately, I feel like I've heard of so many people saying that they're going to reinstall it. And the thing is that dating apps, they make their money off of you staying on the app. So it's kind of like finding the cure to cancer. There's more money in treating it than in actually curing it. So it's like, well, there's more money in keeping people swiping or whatever.
Of course.
It is that people are doing.
But I really do think dating apps are... Sorry, guys. There's, like, a Florida storm outside. You guys get a little bit of tropical, like, ambiance here.
You can probably hear the raindrops in the background, too.
That was a long one.
Unless I accidentally delete them.
That's a long one. Okay. But like I was saying, I absolutely hate dating apps for a multitude of reasons. I think it is the most shallow form of meeting somebody. because whether or not you even get a swipe is largely based, I'd say 80 to 85% based on the first picture that you post. You can post, like, I think up to, like, 5, 10, something like that, and it doesn't matter. Like, a girl won't even scroll to the second picture if the first one wasn't good.
Right.
You know, and then it's like, okay, so the first one's good, and now she's going to check your bio, and it's like, how much can you say in 1,000 characters to, like, really, like, hook someone in, you know? And the fact that the apps put indicators of, like, over 6 feet tall, you know, between this age and this age, specifically within 5 miles of my radius, you know.
There's filters.
There's so many filters, and they're so inauthentic. They're so inauthentic in the way that you go about filtering who you're going to talk to, who you're not going to talk to, right? And then aside from that, I just feel like it de-incentivizes people to meet people the way it was always intended to be met. I also really personally don't like the apps that want girls to make the first move. But that one I feel controversial about, because that one I feel is not founded in the way that the Lord intended relationships to form. Like, women are such beautiful prizes. Not that men aren't, but women are supposed to be sought after. They're supposed to be pined for. You know, like, women are the prize that men need to go and, like, compete for. When you switch that narrative and you turn it into, oh, well, now she's got to make the first move, I think it's supposed to be trying to get all the shallow girls out, because it's like, oh, well, I really like this guy, I'm going to go ahead and go up to talk to him. And of course it's founded in, like, new age feminism of, like, well, why can't you go talk to him? You take charge of your relationship, you know? You be the big one here and put your big girl panties on and, you know, go talk to that man and take charge. But at the end of the day, like, personally, I don't know, maybe this is my bias coming through, but personally, I think I'm a person who, like, a woman who has a very fiery personality about me, and I'm a very strong-willed woman. And even yet, I want a man to be more strong-willed than I am and come seek me out. You know, don't be intimidated by me, but take charge and say, that's a beautiful woman. I'm interested in her. I want to go talk to her. That's way more attractive to me than a woman who's like, let me go take this guy out for a drink.
I think that's definitely the rule, but I can always say that there are exceptions. I told you about that one. One of my old bosses was telling us about her love life. Not in great detail, but in that some of us were asking, how did you and your husband meet? How did he propose? And then she says, actually, I proposed to him.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got my own feelings about that, too.
But for some people, it works. Like, I understand that there are exceptions to the rules. I understand that people are going... It really depends on who you are and what your values are. So what would you say to people who maybe do subscribe to that new way of thinking where it's not the worst thing if a woman makes the first move?
Well, if I'm going to answer your question very literally, I wouldn't say anything to them. Because ultimately, above all else, I believe that the Lord has given us all free will. And you are... God, of all things, gave you permission. Do what you want with your life. Do what works for you. But I promise you, my way is better. Mm-hmm. You know? And I genuinely feel that. I subscribe to that a lot. It's just, no matter how good I think I have formulated a plan, God's plan is always better. You know? But he does give you the permission to choose another way. And that other way might be harder, that other way might take longer, that other way might be less fulfilling, that other way might lead to regret later on. You know, that other way might call into question your sense of self and self-worth.
Yeah.
You know? But at the end of the day, he's going to let you do it, so why wouldn't I let you do it? Who am I to be controlling anyone or changing anyone's mind, you know? If I say something that prompts thought, and now you begin to question and wonder and do thought experiments with yourself, fantastic, I've done my job, you know. But me to sit here and tell you that your way of doing it is wrong and my way is right, I mean, biblically, I feel that. Because if I align myself with Christ, I'm doing it right. And if I go against Christ, I'm doing it wrong. But that doesn't just apply to people who are having differing values than me. That same logic applies to myself as well.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because honestly, with how prevalent and ubiquitous dating apps are, I think even if you're not on one yourself, you know someone who's on a dating app.
Yeah.
So, do you think that has had something to do with why relationships have become more difficult to get into and maintain nowadays?
Oh, 100%. I feel like the way things were intended to work and the way they've worked forever was just, you go out, you spend so much time taking care of yourself in that process of going out, right? Like for women, like we all know, it's like you go, you get your nails done, you get your hair done, you go get your lashes done, you just spend like an hour, 2 hours on makeup, you pick your best outfit, you feel incredible, you smell divine, and it's like you're really putting forth at least one like percentage of what you have to offer, your best self, and men, they go out and they do the same thing. It's like you take, such good care of yourself. You groom yourself that day. You pick out a nice outfit, go get a haircut, go, take care of your facial hair. You too also smell divine, put on your best shoes, and you go out and you guys are putting your best foot forward. And you go out into these social situations where you go and have human contact, and you're able to see somebody in motion. You're able to hear them. You're able to see them and talk to them and have, good conversation with this person at the very least. No matter, even if it's superficial, like you get to see their conversational skills. And at the end of the day, you get your vibe. It's a vibe you can't get off of from a screen.
Right.
You get their vibe. And it's like, you get to see if they're charming and you get to see if they're funny and you get to see how they react in groups, and that's so important to analyze that in a person. If you feel safe with them, as opposed to getting all the red flags, all the bad vibes. Like, I mean, somebody might look incredible on Tinder and then they're like low-key the worst person ever, Mm-hmm. And you go and you meet these people and then you go and meet them again and again, and each time is in a more and more intimate setting. Maybe you meet them on a double date the second time and then a single date the third time. And by that point, you should have a really good indication of whether or not you want to go ahead and pursue this further.
Right.
But when the whole relationship has been founded on human contact and communication, as opposed to this mentality of you were just a swipe. That's all you are, is a swipe. Knowing that I could ghost, knowing that I could delete, that I could block, that I could just never respond to you again, and there's no need for confrontation. I don't have to break up with anybody if you were just a hinge swipe. Mm-hmm. There's no social anxiety in it. It's just ghost. Block, never see him again. When your mind starts turning people into block or don't block situations, when people become an algorithm to you, when people become an app to you and they're just a swipe, I mean, you've just dehumanized the person on the other end of that phone. On the other end of, like, there's a user at the other end of that app.
Yeah. And
it's like, yeah, when you meet somebody, you've built a connection no matter how shallow, but when you are just a swipe to somebody, like, how could you turn that into a relationship?
I think intentionality definitely plays a big part into it. And I think that the success stories definitely had to have had that intentionality.
Yeah.
Because honestly, even without the apps, you kind of see it nowadays with people getting into situationships. That's like the big word. Mm-hmm. Never really committing, but you're spending every day together. You're sleeping over at one another's apartments, dorms, what have you. But then some random interviewer on YouTube goes on the street and says, you guys are together, right? And they're like, oh, the guy's like, yes, and the girl's no.
Yeah. That's so awkward.
And it kind of begs the question, is it really the dating apps or is it just the mentality?
I definitely think that there's an issue in mentality nowadays in general. I think that there's so much social anxiety, not clinically, not like diagnosably, but rather this social awkwardness that everyone is subscribed to, where it's like nobody wants to go out and have conversation. If I'm being really honest with you, it sounds really silly to say it, but I genuinely feel like the obsession women have nowadays with true crime is actually really damaging. Because you have no idea how many times I've heard girls say, like, but what if he's a serial killer? And I'm like, do you realize the percentage chance of that? Like, I don't know about that. But they have this genuine fear of men. They're like, but what if he's something that what if this is the advertisement and what he actually is a psychopath and he wants to hurt me? Mm-hmm. You know? And it's like women didn't have that kind of feeling back then. You know? And there's this huge mistrust in men nowadays, and it breaks my heart because it's one of those things where it's like the percentage of men that actually suck is really small, but the ones that do suck so bad that like it makes local news. And so it's like now we're just generalizing. But it's so true. I feel like there's a huge issue in people connectivity nowadays, trust, anxiety kind of reflected in the sense of self, where they're just like, I'm not comfortable being alone with this person, you know, or anything like that. And there are totally ways around this. Like, if you were going on a date with somebody you don't know, have your friends track your location, or have a friend, you know, show up at the same restaurant 15 minutes later, you know, something like that. Like, there are safeguards. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be safe in the way that you meet strangers.
Right.
But this fear of human connection is crazy. And I also feel like it is that way on the other end of the spectrum. I've heard from a lot of my guy friends who are single that they are terrified of being seen as a predator. They're so scared that they're going to walk up to a girl and offer her a drink and she's going to think it's roofied. You know, that they're going to walk up to a girl and try to talk to her a little bit and he's just annoying the hell of her all night long. You know, the amount of fear and anxiety men have to be seen as creeps, you know, like they're like, oh gosh, like I don't want to bother her. I don't, you know, and girls go out in such big groups that they just become unapproachable. And it's like, I feel like you guys are just doing socialization all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's funny because I've heard this phrase and I don't 100% agree with it, but I feel like it's, well, I want to get what your feelings on it. It's that the difference between flirting and being a creep is how attractive she finds you.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. You want to expand on that?
Yeah, because we often see these, like, in social settings like a bar. Let's say that a girl's on her own, she's sitting at the bar, and she gets approached by a guy. Something that, actually, no. I mean, do you remember that story that we saw about the old couple that had been together for 50 years? And the person asked them, how did you guys meet? And he says, oh, I used to work at the train station directing, like changing the direction of the rails. And I saw her and I was upset because I thought I'd never see her again because she got on her train and left. And then she comes by the second day and it turns out she had gotten a new job in the city she was working. So I would reroute her train so I could see her over and over again until I could eventually just ask her out. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, that sounds creepy if it didn't have a happy ending.
Yeah. I was just going to say, and then a bunch of people say that's the biggest red flag ever. You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like, I don't know, I just feel like what used to be men on the prowl, and that was a good thing, it's like, I'm out here looking for my wife, has turned into, wow, you're a creep. Like, wow, you're really out here, like, rerouting my train so you can come and see me. And it's like, do you not understand how much he's like, of course, like you said, like that would sound really bad if it didn't have a happy ending, but the way this man set his eyes on something he wanted, you know, and it's like, of course he didn't introduce himself on that second reroute or maybe even on the third reroute. Like, sure, guy needed a little bit of a courage to finally go up and talk to her, but I assure you that what that woman probably thought when he came forth and told her what he had been doing was, wow, he must really like me to go to such an effort you know, to go to such a length
Right.
to see me. And it's like, that is the biggest ego boost. But women won't allow themselves this ego boost anymore because they're too busy thinking the worst of the person on the other end.
But I honestly get that way of thinking. I mean, like, I'm not even a woman, but I could see how that guy had a lot of power
Yeah.
in doing that. Like, he could have really messed things up. I think there's a more modern example. The Ballerina Farm family. Do you remember that?
No, I have no idea.
Okay, I saw this on the news. Well, actually, no, I saw the whole, like, backlash about it, but there's a woman who runs a company called Ballerina Farm, and she met her husband, who's like the heir to JetBlue or something. He was in the airport. He saw her, and he literally went up to the kiosk and got himself a ticket, like, right next to her, and pulled some strings so he would sit right next to her.
That's so cute.
But again, had it not worked out, that would have been really creepy and really messed up, because that's a whole flight, too. You can't get away.
Yeah, absolutely. But, you see, it only feels creepy. Why? Because he took the initiative, bought the ticket, rearranged, you know, used his wealth for this. If he had just been the guy who happened to have bought the ticket next to her, she would have been stuck in the same position anyways.
Fair.
You know, and it's like, it's only as creepy as you're willing to make it, and it's only creepy because we have distanced ourselves so much socially from the other person. Because now all you're looking for is red flags. You're looking for the worst in this person, as opposed to just meeting people the way you used to, you know, and just talking to them. And just engaging when somebody talks to you, you know. I'll give you an example. I mean, so obviously we're in a relationship, so I'm no longer on the market looking for men. But there was one instance a couple semesters ago that I was sitting at a Starbucks doing homework, and I had gotten all dolled up for it just because that's honestly kind of just like my upbringing. It's like, you don't really, like, in my household, we don't just go out to somewhere where I'm going to be sitting for a long period of time just looking bummy. You know, if I'm going to go out, I think I was wearing like a skirt, maybe like a top and a vest on top of that with some earrings or something. You know, nothing special, but I'd gotten dolled up for it. And I'm sitting there and I'm doing my work and I have my headphones in, and I see that the guy sitting across from me, we were like on this communal table where we could all like collaboratively work. This guy across from me says something to me. I didn't hear him, so I pull out my headphone. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, what was that? And he's like, I just wanted to tell you that you're really beautiful. And I was like, this is so sweet. Thank you. You know, and if I had been seeking out a man, it was at that point where I could have taken charge. He's already done his job. He saw someone he liked. He went for it. He gave me a compliment, a really, honestly, heavy compliment, I think. Like, he didn't call me cute. He was like, you were beautiful. I was like, yeah. Thank you. You know, it's at that point where if I wanted to be in a relationship, I have to engage now. You know, and just, like, assess the situation real quick. Be like, do I want to be with this guy? And that guy wasn't a bad-looking guy, honestly. He was a pretty good-looking guy. He seems really sweet. I think he was, like, writing in a notebook or something. And it's at that point where I could have been like, thank you so much. Like, you're you know, pretty attractive yourself. Like, what are you working on there? And start conversation. Where everyone, like, it feels like everyone nowadays would have just been like, thanks. Give him, like, a weird look, kind of like a side eye, and go back to doing your own thing.
Right.
And then go home and cry because you're single. And it's like, honey, you gotta, like, try.
Do you think that's why situationships are so common? Because people are so ill inclined to be vulnerable like that? Because it takes a certain kind of vulnerability to acknowledge a compliment and then put yourself out there, in a sense.
I honestly, if I'm being perfectly honest with you, I don't know why situationships work. Or like, why people keep trying to get into them. Because I feel like people go into situationships because they don't want the commitment. Mm-hmm. They're like, I want a relationship without being tied down, quote unquote. You know, like, I don't want to be tied down to this man. I don't want to have to commit to this man, you know. And they're just like, yeah, I want to hold hands and kiss and have sex and, you know, have fun and go on dates, but you're not my boyfriend. Mm-hmm. So that way, as soon as you become inconvenient to me, I can go sign something better and I don't have to break up with you and it's not this big ordeal.
Or if something better comes along.
But at the end of the day, you are going to feel horrible at the end of it. You know, like, he's going to feel terrible because he's going to feel used.
Mm-hmm.
You might end up feeling used, yourself. But at the end of the day, there's no getting around it. If you're in a situationship long enough, you're going to get attached.
Right. That's just how we are, though.
Yeah, of course. That's how humans are. And so, if you're going to get attached anyways, when you break off that situationship, you think you're saving yourself a heartbreak. You're not. The commitment's not the issue that's, like, providing you a heartbreak. It's your attachment.
Right.
And there's just no getting around it. So at that point, you have to really look inwards and be like, why am I so scared of committing to this? Because I'm going to put this out here for everyone, like, very loud and clear. There will always be someone better. There are 7 billion people on this earth. 8 billion at this point? There's 8 billion people on this earth. I promise you will never get through all of them. You won't even get through all of the ones in your zip code. Okay? And at any given moment, you could find someone better. Okay? Someone who's just 0.1% better in any area. Whether they make $10 more than your current partner, whether they're an inch taller than your current partner, whether they have just slightly more green in their hazel eyes. Like, you will always find someone that is objectively better. But the fact of the matter is saying, but I love this one. And I'm done looking, The same thing is said in the wedding dress industry. I don't know if you know that there are some girls who are really scared to commit to a dress because they always think, like, what if I wait a week and a new collection comes out and the actual dress that I should have
they never pick the
is
first
somewhere
one.
out there,
Yeah.
And it's like, but this one's the one I don't want to take off. I don't want to keep shopping. I don't want to keep looking. I want to take this one and put it in a bag and take it home. And once you feel like that, you stop looking, And I feel like dating apps make you feel like you have so many options. You're almost like decision fatigued by it.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I gotta keep looking. I mean, what if he's not Mr. Right? What if he's not my soulmate? What if he's not perfect? And it's like, well, actually, whether or not he is, I'm gonna give you both kind of perspectives here because we have many listeners. Whether or not he is dictated by the Lord, right? Yeah. Your person is your person no matter what. But if you're not a believer, at the same time, whether or not this person is your choice. Is whether or not you're willing to commit to it, put in the work for it, fall in love with that person, and decide for yourself, is this my person? Right. Am I done looking?
I feel like people have a hard time with that because, like you said, there is work involved. When it comes to relationships, it's never going to be perfect 24/7, 365.
Right.
And it really kind of kills that fairy tale, the happily ever after.
Mm.
Because even 2 days ago, you and I were getting into it.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it so that we don't love each other any less. It's just the fact that we're still here and still trying is more of a testament than all of the happy times we've ever had.
Yeah.
Because working through it, giving and taking, finding compromise, and compromise often involves nobody gets what they want, like exactly what they want,
mm-hmm.
shows that high level of commitment, shows that I'm not just in it for the superficial things.
Right.
I'm in it for what the potential that this relationship has to become, all the blessings that our relationship can bring on to each other and to other people outside of our relationship, funny enough. Because you never know who you're going to inspire just by being yourself and showing that in this day and age where you have access to millions of people and you have your pick of the litter if you're a certain kind of person, that there is still the opportunity, like you still have that hope that the person exists that would be willing and eager to be with you despite any flaws that you may have in yourself subjectively or flaws that you might have objectively that everybody is like, yeah, no, that's a flaw.
Yeah.
So I kind of want to blame it on like the short attention spans like everyone has that they run at the first sight. And I feel like that plays into situationships too.
Yeah. There's like a lack of endurance in relationships. I totally agree. And I totally agree to the thing you said where you were like, what was it? You were like, oh, I can't remember now, but it doesn't matter. I'll get to my point anyways. I think, so I'd like to disclose something, to self-disclose here, that when each of us was looking for a relationship, neither one of us was going into it looking for sex. That was like the last thing that we even had on our minds. For you, is like, I want a relationship and all that it encompasses. For me, I was already well on my journey with the Lord, and I said to myself, like, I'm looking for my husband, you know? So sex was the last thing on my mind. I feel like that's a huge issue, is that it seems to be the first thing on people's mind if you're using dating apps. And in a lot of instances, that is the first thing. And to judge someone off of something so intimate, oh my gosh, I can't even imagine being judged off your performance. And that is the very thing that decides whether or not you get a call back from this girl the next day. Mm-hmm. That sounds like so much pressure to put on someone on the first time meeting a stranger. You know? It's honestly kind of mind-boggling to me that you can even get to that step with a stranger. Like, I wouldn't share a fork with a stranger. I wouldn't let a stranger... Like, imagine, like, there's, like, this really cute guy on the corner of your street and you're waiting for the bus. Would you let that guy, like, drink out of your straw? Like, drink out of your drink? Like, take a sip out of your Starbucks? Like, ew, no. Absolutely. Like, I sanitize my hands every time I touch a public doorknob. Like, much less am I going to let a stranger into my bed, you know? But nonetheless, when we were looking for a relationship, that was the last thing we were looking for. And so it put forth all the, okay, so if not that, what do we each bring? You know, what do we each have to offer each other?
Can we even maintain a conversation for more than a few minutes?
Yeah. Do I find you interesting? I mean, that's huge. Do I find you interesting? Like, do you engage me at all? Do you, like, make my brain work at all? You know, in any capacity. I mean... Dros and I were both, like, big scholars. We like school, we like learning, and that's certainly one way of engaging. But we also really love all sorts of stuff and, like, different, you know, nerd culture. We like the same kind of gaming. We have a lot of, like, hobbies in common, and so there is plenty of places for us to engage in that sense. But I genuinely think that people don't even know what to look for in a life partner anymore.
Yeah. You
know, and it's like a life partner. Like, that's huge. Like, what could life encompass? Is this somebody who cares about you enough that if after a month of dating you got into a car accident and could no longer provide them anything physical, would they stay? That's a life partner.
And that's a big one. That's crazy. That's actually that's a lot more common than I thought it was. I see these kinds of stories online all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I love this story that I found online, but it was somebody saying, you know, when she asks you, would you still love me if I'm a worm? It's not the worm. That's not the point. The point is, would you still love me if I had nothing to offer you? Would you still love me if I didn't have this body that's functioning right now in the way that it is? If I gained 200 pounds, would you still love me? If I was completely atrophied because I got sick, would you still love me? Mm-hmm. Would you love me if I wasn't able to work and therefore not provide financially to us? Mm-hmm. Would you love me if I couldn't speak to you anymore? Or if I couldn't see you anymore? Or if I couldn't hear you anymore? You know, would you still love me if you had to take care of me? You know, that's the questions you should be asking when you're thinking about a life partner. And then wondering, okay, I'm you know, I love saying it because it's kind of cute in my head. I think a lot of people mistake it when I say it, but you're stuck with me. You know, like, you're stuck with me forever. Are you okay with being stuck with me? Like, do you like being stuck together? If you couldn't sever this anymore? Because us as Christians, we look at it like, okay, we're married. There's no severing that anymore.
Unless under very specific instances.
Yeah, of course. Whenever we talk about this stuff, we're not at all touching on toxic, abusive, you know, terrible relationships that are much better. Your safety always comes first.
Yeah.
But we're talking about, like, your day-to-day, you know, your usual, like, I'm 24 and I'm angry that I'm not in a relationship, you know?
Yeah. PSA to the guys, whenever they start testing you, I know it can be annoying sometimes, but trust me, it's a lot more innocent than they're letting on.
She just wants to be reassured.
Yeah.
That she's worth something to you.
What is it that I told you when you asked me the worm question?
Oh, it was so sweet. He said that he would buy me a little enclosure and put lots of moist dirt in it and feed me. And I asked him if he'd hold me, and he was like, yeah, I'd hold you. I'd like set aside time to like hold you.
To just pick you up.
To just pick you up and have you in my hands. And I was like, that's it, he's the one. He passed the worm question.
Oh, man. But yeah, no, there's all kinds of questions now. There's the whole, what is it, orange peel theory?
I love orange peel theory. It's so cute. For anyone who doesn't know what the orange peel theory is, it is basically if your girl comes up and asks you for an orange, if she says, babe, can you get me an orange? Would you walk over to the fruit bowl and just grab an orange and hand it to her? Or would you take the time to peel that orange, slice it up, put it on a plate, and go give it to her? And it's the extra care. Just the extra little step that shows he cares. He wants to take care of me. You know, because it's definitely not a capability thing. She's more than capable of peeling it with her bare hands if she really wanted to, you know. It's the extra sense of, I'm doing this because I love you.
Yeah. It's kind of like the making sure she doesn't... There's like a bunch of like little rules that I don't think we follow as much anymore, but there's like, she doesn't walk on the side of traffic when you guys are on the sidewalk. You know, open the doors for her. And I even told you, like, there's the whole opening the door, the man is actually supposed to go in first because he's supposed to survey to see if it's appropriate for her to go in.
Yeah, and then open the door from the inside.
Yeah. So it's all kinds of funny things like that. They're fun, though. So I guess because people aren't getting into as many, like, I don't know if you know this, but what are we in, Gen Alpha?
I think so.
Yeah, Gen Z and Gen Alpha apparently statistically are getting into less relationships. They are having less sex and they don't want to have children.
Makes sense.
And that's an issue for obvious reasons, right? Like population decline is already becoming an issue in certain countries.
Yeah.
How do you think we fix that?
Fix it? Oh, man. I have no idea how you go about fixing that. I know that a huge reason that people don't want to have children is because, one, people don't feel capable anymore. Like, I know a ton of people in their late 30s are still saying, I feel 17. Mm-hmm. You know, a ton of people saying, I don't feel like I'm ready to be a mom. I can't be a mom.
Or you see those people that are just like, I was born in 2006 and I just had my first kid.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm over here almost hitting, 30?
You're almost 30.
I'm just looking at them like, ew.
Yeah. And so a lot of people, you know, have like this, not in any clinical sense, but just this mental perception of themselves as far younger than they really are. So they don't feel capable of taking such a responsibility on. But I think, of course, I mean, without a doubt, the fact that our economy is awful does not help. People are like, I can barely make rent. How do you expect me to make children? You know, I think the fact that our so this generation, the earlier, or the younger and younger generations are becoming more and more and more preoccupied and concerned with social justice in the world right now. And I think they look at our you know, our specific little world, our little America in the world, and just think, God, you know, like, global warming is horrible. The housing market is crashing. If I have a gay kid or a transgender kid, like, there's not going to be gender affirming care for them. And there's school shootings everywhere. And there's so much crime. And there's so much this and there's so much that. I can't tell you how many times I've had my own personal friends tell me, I don't want to bring kids into this hellscape. Like, that doesn't feel responsible. Me as an adult to willingly bring a life into this? Why would I do that? You know? And so there's this feeling of like, I'm responsible for making the world a better place before I can have children.
Yeah, but it's kind of because you need to keep the species going. Mm-hmm. It won't matter. Like, if you don't bring kids into this world, guess what? The world's not going to continue.
And you know what? That's another thing that I've heard of, that people are like, why would I bring more kids into this world when there are so many who need a home?
That's a good thing, though. Like, adoption is something I would love to do.
Yeah, I remember us talking about that before.
But it's like, you sit there and think like, well, if I not waste, I'm not going to say that. If I spend my time and I decide to allocate my life to fixing all the issues that I see in the world that I would want fixed before I decided to bring life into it, you might end up just spending your whole life. And at that point, well, depending on how many siblings you have, that might just be it for your family.
Yeah.
And because everyone needs to have 2 kids in order to replace at least mom and dad, then it just becomes, if you have anything less than that, then we start regressing. We start having shortages in places where you never expected to have shortages. Like they already say that the workforce is bad enough as it is, but imagine if we had a smaller population.
Yeah.
It would just get worse and worse. And sure, with less people, the environment might get better, because there's less people with their own carbon footprint to add to that. But at the same time, well, now there's just no one who can do, jobs that I need to get done because I do not have that specialty training. So it really is just like something you got to figure out for yourself. Just kind of like you have to figure out what you need in a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, ultimately, one thing I can certainly get behind is don't have kids if you really don't want to have kids, because that kid's going to know that they weren't wanted. One way or another, you cannot hide it. A child knows when they've been had, like when they've been brought into a family that didn't really want them and just had them because they felt a social obligation to do it.
Right. And in the Bible it says that not everyone's meant to have kids or meant to...
Yeah. That not everyone is meant for kids, not everyone is meant for marriage. Granted, the Bible does say that if you did not want to take place in that sacrament, that your other option was to give servitude to the church. So it's not so much that just like don't do it or don't ever do it, but rather if you're not going to do it, spend that time in servitude to Christ.
That's a good distinction.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if that's for you, then all the power to you, actually.
All the power to you.
So, with this lack of commitment that we seem to be, this pandemic of no commitment, we're seeing a lot less marriages happen. And I know that that's taken a hit on the wedding industry, the bridal industry.
Yeah.
So, but what's happening more is that, have you seen the self-weddings?
Oh my gosh, that's ridiculous.
It's like I just spent $50,000 in a union to myself.
To myself. That's crazy. Honestly, as mentally deranged as that sounds, I also think that it is biblically scorned. Because marriage, as we know it as Christians, is a holy sacrament. And the Lord details exactly what marriage is supposed to look like.
Right.
And not that we're scared of getting political on this podcast, because we're really not. But take out the gender of it all. Like, just let's, for a moment, like, don't even realize that it's, like, between a man and a woman. But it's between two people.
Yeah.
At the very least. It is something that is supposed to take place between two people and God. So really, it's a tri-union, right? And so the fact that you would go so far as to marry yourself, call it, like, if it's a joke, it's a joke, but people who do this unironically, doesn't that feel a little bit like self-worship?
Yeah.
Like, it takes it far past beyond the point of, like, oh, I just really love myself. And it's like, you're so in love with yourself that you're going to spend all this time and money and effort doing this ridiculous thing and seeing it through, And I feel like we see a lot of self-worship nowadays. I was telling you a couple weeks back that, like, one of the most outrageous things that I'd seen lately was the Nair commercial. Nair, the hair removal cream.
Oh, yeah.
That their new slogan is worship yourself. I'm like, I'm the last thing I want to worship, dude. I'm the most imperfect, like, like, there's nothing. I am so harsh on myself and so critical of myself. I am the last thing I would want to worship. I am not worthy of worship, let alone self-worship. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's just so much of this narrative of like, love yourself, do what's right for you, you know, take care of yourself, put yourself first, worship yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not what's supposed to be worshipped in this existence.
Yeah. And even if you were to take the whole biblical aspect out of it, at the end of the day, it always just feels good to like help others, to serve others. Like I tell you, I love Christmas not because I get presents, but because I get to buy presents for everyone else.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I feel like that's probably the biggest issue when it comes to relationship, because we always see those videos from from other podcasts where it's just like a panel of people who are saying, this is what I need from a man, or this is what I need from a woman. Like from the women I've seen, it's like I need a man to be 6 feet tall minimum, make 6 figures, be fit, be handsome, and to pay my bills and all that stuff. Like before even getting married.
Yeah.
And then on the counter to that the men on those podcasts often say like they want a traditional woman, but at the same time you look at those men and it's like, well, they're not traditional men either. So there's a lot of hypocrisy on both sides.
Absolutely.
And it's really turned into like a man versus woman thing, unfortunately, that has even de-incentivized even more people to get out of relationships or to seek them elsewhere.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever heard of the Passport Bros?
Oh, wait, I do think you told me about this.
It's just dudes who have remote jobs that can be done, as long as they're done within a certain time, they log in their hours, they can work from anywhere, so they go to other places, mainly Southeast Asia, and they look, or South America, and they look for more, I guess, traditional, quote-unquote traditional women who, you know, take care of the home, who, like, before, you know, women, like, the type of woman that used to, like, do things that adhere to gender roles.
Sure. Trad wife.
Yeah. But I've heard it's, like, kind of causing a lot of ire.
I mean, it makes sense that it would. Honestly, I feel like that's a huge issue that we're having in modern day relationships, is everybody's so self-involved. Everybody is so like, what do you bring to the table? And it's like, ask yourself that question. Go stand in a mirror and ask yourself, what do you bring to the table? Like,
I am the table.
I am the table. But no, seriously, it's one of those things where it's like, I remember at the very beginning of our relationship, I used to explain to you that in an ideal relationship, I would never be concerned about myself. I would spend all my time making sure that you're okay, that you're satisfied, that you're loved, that you're respected, that your needs are met. And in an ideal relationship, you would be feeling the exact same way. And we'd be so taken care of by each other that you would never have to introspect and say, what am I lacking?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And if you did have to introspect, that means, like, I've fallen short. I dropped the ball. And at that point, I'd want you to tell me, hey, I need more of this from you. You know? And that's, in my opinion, that's how it should be, is me not worried about myself. I worry about you. I watch your back. I want to see you succeed. My job is to build you up. And if you were to do the exact same thing to me at the same caliber, we'd be golden.
We'd want for nothing.
You know? And I just look at the fact that so many men want a trad wife, you know, nowadays. It makes you wonder why. Like, it really makes you wonder, like, what are you lacking in modern day relationships that make you want for that? And I think women, from this narrative of self-worship, have created this narrative in their heads that they are some kind of irreplaceable, like, mega gift. That they are just this priceless thing that everyone should want. You know?
In a sense, they are. I mean, like, you're the only ones who can bring life into this world.
Absolutely. But that being said, like, you're not an infallible being, though. And you have flaws that he's got to put up with. Because that's really what it is he's loving you through it. But you're not perfect. You know? And so this feeling that women have this entitlement of, like, yeah, I just want him to please me, take care of me, pay my bills, but I don't want to do anything. You know, what am I doing? I'm here. I'm in your presence. That's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. Because it's a relationship. He's not worshiping you. Nor should he. You know? Like, you're not some kind of god queen that needs to have gifts brought at the altar. You know, like, when you're in a relationship, you're in a dynamic.
Yeah.
You need to fulfill his needs, too. Yeah. You know?
And that comes from that give and take, and that comes from that communication.
Yeah.
Where if something is lacking, the relationship should be a safe enough space where either one of you can bring something up. And as long as it's reasonable, I don't see why the answer would be no.
Right.
Like, I think we talked about this when I told you I was going back to school. We had that conversation. And now that you're back in school, it's flipped. Like, I'm at your beck and call.
Yeah.
Whenever you want, whatever you need, provided that, like, I'm not working, you got it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that really is so true. Like, for the past, so, you know, a couple days ago, and honestly yesterday too, he had nothing to do. I mean, he had better things to do in the sense that he could, like, be entertaining his hobbies. He could be, you know, spending time with family. I have been stuck in a library from, like, dusk to dawn. Okay, like, every day trying to get my homework done because I've just had a really, really heavy week in terms of, like, case material. You know, like, I'm reading hundreds and hundreds of pages, and we're cracking open a DSM-5, which is a pretty hefty piece of literature. And I'm just sitting there frying my eyeballs on my blue screen of my computer. And he was just sitting there with me, you know, just to be in my company. You know, and it's like whenever I was like, babe, can you get me a coffee? You know, absolutely. Immediately gets up, goes downstairs to go get me a coffee. You know, if I needed water, if I needed anything, he's there helping me carry my bags and stuff. And I don't ever have to ask. You know, ask because how else would he know that I would want one? But, you know, the extra mile of just being there, being present, being supportive. And on the contrary, if I needed time away from him and say, you know what, I'm going to get distracted and I need to just lock in. Can we just not be on the phone until tonight when I'm done? He's like, yeah, absolutely. And he'll go and find something to do all day. You know, but that communication, that fulfilling of a need, and knowing that, like, it's been reciprocated for him, so now he gets to reciprocate it back.
Yeah. So, I think this is going to be the last question. And it's kind of seems a little different than what we were talking about, but it's going to take it back to the original theme of relationships and marriage. And marriage in particular, but we're seeing a lot of civil unions happening. And there's like a huge fatherlessness crisis going on.
Yeah.
What do you have, like, what are your opinions on the direction that people are trending towards in that regard?
Well, before we start, let's define a definition for civil union.
Okay, so the official definition is, according to the United States, is a legally recognized union with rights similar to those of marriage, created originally for same-sex couples in jurisdictions where they were not allowed to marry, but has now come to expand and has now been expanded to people who have spent an extended amount of time living together or cohabitating. And it varies by state, depending on how much time.
Gotcha. Okay, so this is kind of, I guess, with more colloquial terms. This is just essentially like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of this. It, like you said, it's different state to state. I think in Florida it's 8 or 10 years. But if you just live together for a certain amount of time, a designated amount of time, you've basically earned rights of basically being married. Mm-hmm. You just never filed for a marriage license. And so you guys aren't legally recognized as married, but you have all the same rights as if you were married.
Like filing taxes together.
Yeah, joint accounts, like the whole thing, you know. And so you're saying that people nowadays are trending towards that?
Yeah, because they find it goes back to that whole commitment issue.
Yeah, it's a huge commitment issue.
A civil union is a lot easier to break off because
there's no divorce.
There's no divorce. There's no splitting of assets unless it's just like straight down the middle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of sounds like why people would want to do it. We're just heading in a space of, you know, this first world society. Because really, honestly, this is America. This is the United States of America.
The West.
I dare say it's not even, because I feel like we don't see that in Latin America and stuff like that, you know? Like, we don't see that as much in Canada. This is like a very US of A issue.
Oh, in Canada, they just cheat on each other. You didn't see that whole Ashley Madison scandal?
That's some tea right there.
Years ago, they just found out that an entire town of people were all on this one website cheating on one another.
Yeah, I heard about that. But yeah, I feel like there's just this huge lack of commitment in today's relationships. A lot of people just being like, I just don't want to deal with the burden. I don't want to put in the effort. I'd rather spend the time putting effort into myself and, you know, taking myself to the point of excellence, of worrying about my own excellence, you know, and surpassing. There's so many people who look at their lifespan as, I would rather spend my 20s throwing all of my youth and vigor into myself, making myself the best version of myself, you know, building my empire, so to speak, you know, and getting that 6-figure salary, you know, and only then, once I'm set, will I consider bringing someone along for it. But at that point, you've become so possessive of your wealth that you wouldn't let them touch it with a 10-foot pole. You know, and it's at that point where these civil unions sound really good, because it's like, well, she doesn't need to be involved in what I've built for myself. Or, you know, there's no alimony, there's no, like you said, like no divorce, there's no asset allocation. It's just what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, and we're just kind of enjoying it in proximity of each other. You know?
That sounds sad.
It is. It sounds very sad. It sounds very unfulfilling, honestly, because I don't know, maybe we're old school in this thinking, but what I really truly want is companionship. Mm-hmm. You know, like at the heart of it, I want companionship. That, like, if we are soaring at heights that we never thought were attainable, I want someone to share that wealth with. And if we are broke under a bridge, I'd rather be broke under a bridge with you than alone.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because I feel like nobody wants to be the latter. Nobody, even with someone, they're more focused on where they're at than who they're with. Because even a situation under a bridge like that could be something special. Like, I've heard of couples that they would go to Chipotle every Tuesday or Wednesday because they had a deal and they'd share a bowl, and now they're like wildly successful, and they still do that because it brings back memories of such a nice time.
Yeah.
Like where they knew that this person is with me to the end. This person is with me through hell and high water.
Yeah. Balling on brokenness, it really, like, it solidifies a relationship.
Yeah, and I feel like money is the biggest issue nowadays.
Absolutely it is. I mean, that was just biblical.
Yeah.
You know, absolutely. We knew that wealth would be the thing to divide people from God. You know, he says you can't serve two masters. Yeah. You either choose to serve the Lord or you serve money.
I knew that. I thought you meant in like regards to money and relationships.
Oh, no. Just that. It is the thing that is always going to be divisive. It is the thing that will separate love.
That's really sad.
It is really sad because it's fickle. Yeah. And it's here one day and then your account's drained the next.
Or you could end up like Venezuela.
Where your money just loses its
value day to day.
Its value, yeah.
That was not a dig at Venezuela, just an example.
Just an example. We love Venezuelans.
Yeah. You got anything else?
No. I think we've said our piece. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. We're really glad to have you. We'd love some engagement with you guys. So if you have any topics that you'd like for us to touch on or any questions you want answered, you know, go ahead and comment it on our socials and we will definitely touch on it next episode. But until then, we'll see you next Friday. Bye.
Bye.